Hello and welcome to the award-winning Gutter. I'm your host, Rob Gutmann. Sorry, I just thought of something really, really annoying before I was going to launch into my speech. I normally say who the guests' names are here, and I just had some series of mental blocks as to people's surnames. It's honestly, I have phobias about to wake up in the night, and now it's in my head. I actually don't even know your name.
Shall we go around
I actually don't even
introduce ourselves.
I'm getting
an interesting
it's Paul Johnson, Andy Bell, and Ian Salmon. And I thought, Andy, Paul.
Just think of Rager.
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
Don't Leave Me This Way, Andy. Is that one of their songs? I'm a Rager fan.
A little respect.
Yeah, that's
a little
Andy
respect.
A little respect.
That's a big one.
Put a little respect on Andy Bell's name. Right, that was a cracking start. That's the sort of thing that a sponsor would want to pay for, Paul Johnson. That's why NordVPN is sponsoring this show today. And after a short break over the summer, we are delighted once again to be sponsored by NordVPN. Andy especially, I can see, is delighted that we're sponsored by NordVPN. It's a good VPN service, and it's never been so appealing. The extra online security provided by NordVPN is more important than ever, Ian Salmon.
Yes.
We know this. But the ability to change your virtual location with a click of a button is what we know is most appealing to many of you. Paul Johnson,
Definitely.
You in particular.
Me in particular.
To allow you to avoid restrictions in certain restrictions in inverted commas, and access content that isn't available in one place that might be in another, well, to find out more and get a great discount, go to nordvpn.com/TAW. Wow, quite a start we're having here. So it almost seems like we're dropping down a level to have to talk about Liverpool and transfers. I was actually thinking about having a section to the Gutter show because Mo Stewart and me started a new show this week.
Damn fine show.
Damn fine show, thank you. The Rob and Mo show. I mentioned my name went first because Mo and Rob doesn't work as well. Doesn't rhyme with show as easily.
Alphabetical just doesn't work at all.
Didn't work at all. Did not work. But anyway, Mo introduced this section, which was sort of like in Family Guy or Cheers. There was a section called "What Grinds My Gears" or something like that. And I thought about the transfer window. We should have a "What Pisses You Off About the Transfer Window." Don't worry, you lot don't have to think about it because I've thought about it for you. Because it is sort of linked to the Isak thing, and it's my way of segueing into it. When people get patient about transfers, really winds me up. When people go, hey, if we don't get Isak this summer, we'll get him in January, we'll get him next summer. It'll be fine, chill. I want to smash things over their heads when they say that. Because if we don't get him this summer, he's dead to me. It's like that Naby Keita thing when he was going to come a year later. I was in agony over that. Anybody particularly patient with transfers here, or are you an idiot like me?
I'm completely impatient. I think that Naby Keita is a salient example of the whole thing. Wait a year and then find out he wasn't all that.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other... Oh, no, whether they're any good or not is a whole different universe. When you sign someone, it's the anticipation. It's like Isak. I just want us to sign him. I don't care if he's injured all the time, don't care if he's crap. I just want the marker of that signing, that everyone can go, we're the most important specialist team in the world. What do you think?
And once your intention's there, then I think that's where the being impatient comes from, because as soon as we were linked and it was like, is it true? Then the bid goes in and it's like, right, let's get this done, because we have been so good at doing that in the past as well. So I'm with you. I think once you're linked and the bid's gone in and now it's sort of going a little bit quieter, and we'll come on to it. But so yeah, I'm very impatient and I'd like it done ASAP.
Well, my impatience-ometer, or whatever you call it, is in overdrive, or where impatience-ometers go, because we've sold Darwin. I think it's broken this morning. All the main sources have said it's a done deal. The money's agreed with Darwin. He's going to Al Hilal in Saudi, which now means we haven't got any forwards.
No.
Well, I was trying to do the sums on this one. Out of front three places, there are 114 starting specs per season. And last season, we only have 61 of those starting specs still at the club. And that's Cody Gakpo and Mohamed Salah. Because all our other starting players for the front three positions have gone. And Chiesa didn't start, I don't think, last season. So there are something like 59 or 53, sorry, I did the math, 53 starting places we've got to replace. Okay, we've got Hugo Ekitike, but there's work to be done.
Well, yeah, because he's got to settle in the league, and the problem at the moment is we are basically down to, as you said, just the two that we had. Obviously, the tragic loss of Diogo Jota. When it comes down to actual football terms, like when you take the whole humanity out and just talk football terms, that's a player that that has to be replaced. That there's a gap in the squad that has to be filled. Darwin going, obviously, has to be filled because he did play football last season. Chiesa you could kind of discount because he hardly played at all. But we had 6 last season basically. If you knock Chiesa out for his fitness issues and availability and not being used, you call that 5. But we are on 3, and one of them is a brand new lad. So we need 2 forwards, because I'm beginning to think that I know we're going to come on to James Pearce's briefing in a minute, but with Pearce talking last night about Rio's pathway, I'm beginning to think that we may be looking at using Rio far more than we think we are. I know Arna's talked about protecting him, but the excitement around him and the willingness to use him so far, I've got a feeling that he's actually going to be considered first team. I'd like him to be considered first team as number 6 in the forward line, but that still means we need another 2. And everything is pinned on Isak with 3 weeks to go of the transfer window.
Yeah. Well, this is the other story that broke yesterday. That's had some cold water poured on it, but I'm not writing it off just yet, mainly because I want it to be true. But Andy, we were linked to Bradley Barcola, left winger for Barcelona, not FSG either, PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. I was very surprised by this link, but you can convince yourself there's a certain sense in it. His places became under threat in the second part of last season by the signing of Kvaratskhelia, who also plays in the same position. I mean, in an ideal world, if I were PSG, I would not want to lose Barcola. I would want to keep that elite 4 and rotate between the 3. Don't know if they need money for FFP reasons or what have you. He would be a very, very exciting addition, and he would block paths like a motherfucker, I would say. What are your overall thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's an interesting link. He's a fantastic player. Over 20 goals last season, stayed fit for the whole season as well, which is obviously something that we'll always look at when we're signing a player. So I was very excited by the link. I mean, it makes sense that we do our due diligence on these forwards in case Newcastle just don't let Isak go. And that is the worry at the moment, that they essentially just force him to stay. And
so, are you seeing him as a backup? Assuming there's something in it, are you seeing him as a backup plan, not an Isak signing?
I would say just because of the money involved, probably yes. I can't see both of them happening. I think it's just sort of due diligence on other targets that we're doing at the moment, and I think you look at that left-hand side and it's been sort of rotated between Diaz and Gakpo over the last couple of years, and for me personally, Gakpo's always first choice there. I absolutely love Cody Gakpo as a footballer. I think he's been our sharpest player in pre-season. There was a link, I think, with Bayern Munich for a time, and I was so against letting Cody Gakpo go, because I just think he's fantastic. And I think, if Gakpo does need a rest, or if you take him out of the firing line for whatever reason, or if he's out of form, you've got options there. You've got the likes of Wirtz who can play there. Ekitike can operate from the left-hand side as well, and I think that's probably enough on the left-hand side. Plus, let's see how Ngumoa gets on next season. Does he have a dip in form? Is he able to come in and play a couple of games in the league if Gakpo's not playing? So I just think that left-hand side, we're fairly well stocked there, and always sort of have been. So that's why I'd be slightly surprised by the link. And yeah, I mean, you look at Rio's performances in pre-season, it's been absolutely sensational. He has to get some games this season. Yeah, if we have to at least give him a chance, if we have to pull him out, that's fair enough. But yeah, I can't quite see that one. But yes, we have to do our due diligence on these other options in case what we all want to happen with Isak, including Isak, wants to happen, doesn't happen.
Well, the interesting thing in the way the news broke last night, well, about Darwin Núñez, or was it this morning? Most of the major sources, like the likes of Joycey and Piercy, were using similar language. They were saying, as a result of Darwin's leaving, Liverpool will look to strengthen, recruit in attacking areas. And I noted the use of the plural, not in the attacking area, not look to recruit a forward, in the attacking areas. Now, that to me, maybe to go against Andy's conclusions, is that they are looking for more than one still. The other thing that was stressed is they're looking for players, again plural, who could come in and be starters. They didn't want squad players. And to my mind, that signalled, what did it signal? That they're not after a Malik Fofana kind of player from Lyon or a project of any sort. They are looking at the very highest end of the market, and possibly more than one. And by the way, I would have taken and possibly on balance agreed with Andy's conclusion that it's Isak or one other, Isak and a Barcola, not both. The style of that briefing, and it definitely was a briefing, you could tell, is such that I think they're after more than one significant attacker still this window.
Which again, your point was right. Obviously, who you've got available to play in the positions, but it's also when you think, well, what's our ambition? And obviously, your bread and butter is winning the league, and we'd love to defend that, and that's obviously what we all want to do around the table. But there is a real strong feeling that we want to compete on all four fronts. Champions League is a bare minimum, and then obviously, even in the two, domestic cups. So. What you're saying there, Rob, is it's not someone. Ngamo, we know is going to be a very, very good footballer, and he will get time, I think, this season, and he is that unknown, the freshness of him, the no fear. It's going to be great. But like you said there, Rob, if we are looking at going to get players who will come in and will do a job. Isak is one, Barcola is another, and if that's what the briefing is saying, and it feels like there's a number of targets, it is interesting to see that if you're looking at Nunes, Diaz, and obviously Paul Diogo as being three have gone, and you've got one in. Well, there is almost two spaces, and I don't think you can count on Ngamo as being a replacement for that because he is a work in progress. So it could be that we are looking for two, and that's where it is interesting to see because we all want Isak to get over the line. Of course we do, but is Barcola a plus Isak, or is it in case that doesn't work? And again, I know there's been a little bit of water poured on it this morning, but it's certainly interesting. It's certainly one to keep our eye on.
Yeah, I mean, there was links into Rodrigo sort of consistently for the left-hand side, but that sort of died down a bit.
It seemed to suddenly go very quiet, didn't it?
Gone very quiet, and suddenly Barcola isn't quiet. The one thing Liverpool have signalled, and I think we have to sort of take the correct type of reality check on it, as Paul has said, is that the scale of their ambitions almost knows no bounds, really, this summer. They've done their sums, worked out that they can do certain things. And the type of look, who've Liverpool targeted? The best young forward, I think, who was available. There was a glut of young forwards available this year. Gyökeres, Sesko, who else am I missing? Even Osimhen was available. But they got Ekitike, but Ekitike was the one everyone wanted. Liverpool went out, paid the money, got him. Florian Wirtz, simply the most exciting young footballer available on the planet this summer. Liverpool saw off everyone and got him.
Yeah.
We now know they're going out for a world top 3-4 striker in Isak. The only one potential, not even available unless you are prepared to put stupid amounts of money down.
The best that could possibly move.
So Liverpool, those are three massive statements, and that's before we started thinking about what fantastic signings the likes of Frimpong and Gyökeres are, but just more modestly priced and slightly lower profiles. So the scale of Liverpool's ambition has sort of known no bounds this summer. I reiterate, that's what makes me think. I don't think it's far-fetched that Liverpool would target another 80, 90 million pound player this summer, even beyond Alexander Isak.
In terms of how the market sits now, I don't think it is far-fetched because we would need a left winger. If we're talking about the fact that we want Rio to be back up and we want him to be ready in 2 or 3 years' time, which would be the sensible thing for a lad who is still 16 and doesn't turn 17 for, I think, a couple of months yet. If we're going to go for any left winger, we're paying a minimum of 50 million. We're asking for 50 million for Harvey Elliott. Yeah. And rightly so. Look what he's done for the under-21s. Look at his record. Look at how players are being sold at similar prices. Harvey's good enough to go 50 million. So if we're asking 50 for Harvey, we're paying 50 for somebody of an equivalent level. If we're going to step up a level, 80 is it's your bog standard price now, which is ridiculous. Yeah. But that's what you're paying.
Price of admission.
I think it's a weird one, the Barcola. I've just been, while you're talking, I was Googling furiously to see whether he starts in the Champions League final. He's actually a sub. Desiree Doué starts on the right. So there is no space for him, basically.
On the left,
So he does have a pathway blocked there, but he is a 20-year-old, and if you're buying a 20-year-old, I think I just said this, if you're buying a 20-year-old, you can block a 16-year-old's pathway. That way you're looking at a lad that'll be there for years. So I think we need somebody who can be ready to compete with Gakpo in the way Diaz did last season. And I do think Gakpo holds the shares at the moment, but we need somebody of a Gakpo level, not necessarily an absolute world beater, but somebody who'll come in and do the job. I don't know who that man is.
I think they'll look for, if they are to look for the left-hand side, I think they'd like to find someone who's arguably better than Cody Gakpo. I think that's the philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Why buy someone worse?
Gakpo is very good. And the manager trusts him.
He is very good, but I think Barcola may have a higher ceiling than Gakpo, for example, or they may deem that Rodrigo might have, has a higher ceiling than Gakpo, and that's not to disparage Cody Gakpo. But as I said, if Liverpool buy Malik Fofana, keep using his name, but we've been linked with him on and off, then you could go, well, okay, he's not as good as Cody Gakpo. He's a raw talent. He genuinely would be blocking a Rio Ngamoa. Do you know what I mean?
Because he's a project.
Because he's a project, and we've got the project, in the building, as they say already. But I could see Barcola being an interesting one. I don't know if he can play. Anyone know? Can he play more than the one position? I mean,
that's the other thing I was looking for, to see whether he'd actually started as centre forward at any point, and I can't see that he has.
No, in every game when I've watched PSG, he's always from the left. So I mean, that might be, again, he is kind of he sort of that's his main position sort of thing. And again, if you're thinking, if you look at if Gakpo is our stars from the left. Is that mean Ekitike is it down your central? I don't think so. Is he going to come from the left? So it's that issue, isn't it, of are we actually looking for another left side to play? Because if they're saying that you've got Gakpo, Ekitike and Ngamoa, although he's only a project, then that also throws in, well, are we looking for more central?
Are we looking for two central players?
Are we looking for two central players? But it's because Ekitike, we know, can play as the central. So there's a couple of options there, but it gives you options who you're looking for.
This is what I found odd about the Isak link all along, the fact that we're trying to buy him, that we'd already bought Ekitike, who seemed to take up his position as his prime position. But also, we know it's not this myth that the media seems to put out, that we went to Newcastle and said, well, if you don't sell us in, we'll take your top target. We've been talking to him since December, January, and Slot spoke to him in May. So it's not a get this lad to keep him away from Newcastle. It's get this lad because he's the best under-23 forward in football at the moment. So we've gone for him deliberately. I think we've had Isak in mind all along anyway. So if we've been looking for two down the centre, if they're not letting Isak go, we may still want two down the centre.
Definitely. And again, we've got to acknowledge that Isak, unfortunately, not that it might continue, if we do get him, that there has been a few injuries. So you've got in there. But also, you've got to look at it. I always say, I was saying to my lads, I was saying that you get to a point where we as Liverpool fans almost want, okay, so you're playing Arsenal away on the Saturday and you're going with, if we get Isak, Gakpo, Isak, Mo, yeah. But in the midweek, come round April time especially, you've got a quarter final of a Champions League against PSG away, and you're going with Ekitike,
Gakpo
and that's where I think we almost need to be. It's a headache for Slot if we get that type of strength in the squad. But isn't that what we all want?
It is. But the thing is, we lost the Carabao Cup final because we've just gone 2 hours on the Wednesday night with PSG, and we were knackered on the Sunday.
Well, this is the interesting. What's the word? The interesting thing that's emerging out of this summer, I think, Andy, is this. Everywhere you look, there's fantastic things happening in terms of Liverpool's transfer activity, but also contradictions in play, I think, which is we've lost a big left-sided player in Luis Diaz, really important player, but we don't need to replace him. We've signed a forward in Ekitike, centre forward, most sought after young centre forward, but we now want to buy another one for closing on 150 million. We want to give Ngamoa a minute. We want to not block a pathway for Ngamoa. But if we give him significant game time, then he's going to impact on Ekitike, who's already being impacted by the possible signing of Isak. And there's one thing that stood out for me. You referenced Florian Wirtz playing off the left, which he did in a front three sometimes for Leverkusen. But if that becomes something of a thing, that would sort of at times leave us short in midfield because we expect Harvey Elliott to go. So I think in terms of squad numbers, we play the how many midfielders, how many forwards game do you need. I think Wirtz takes and improves on Elliott's position in the seat in the dressing room, in the midfield sense. It's in the forward positions. I do think they would ideally like to do two, but where, I don't know. See, the logic, and the more we're talking, the more I think, fucking Barcola, yeah, of course, we've got Gakpo. We've got the kid coming through. Ekitike's going to need a lot of minutes if we get Isak. You just don't see a room for another left winger because you bring in Barcola. You go, well, Barcola's not leaving PSG where he's not getting enough game time to suddenly go, I'll 15 starts in the league will do for me at Liverpool. He's not coming to do that. So there's contradictions everywhere.
There are, and this is where I just sort of think Liverpool will go for a bit of quality over quantity this summer. I am uncomfortable with the idea of there being 4 out-and-out forwards. Like I said, you have got Wirtz who can play on the left-hand side. You know, it's probably likely that Frimpong's going to get some games on the right when Salah goes away to AFCON. I think he's seen as an option there. And I think when you spend...
Szoboszlai can do that as well.
Szoboszlai, of course, yeah. I think when you spend sort of 110 million or whatever it is on Florian Wirtz, similar on Isak, big money on Ekitike... It's very hard to then bring in somebody of the level who can appropriately challenge a Gakpo, but also sort of not block Rio's minutes, and who can get their games, which them and the club are both satisfied by. I just think that's very difficult to get that right, and I'm not sure that exists in a world where Isak comes into Liverpool. I think you look at last season, and it was very much sort of quality over quantity. Arne Slot picks from a core of 15, 16 players. And we know that him and his staff are able to keep these players fit, and we didn't have the injury problems we had under Jurgen Klopp, and we were able to go with that team. Now, I agree with Ian's point. There were times, I think even second half of the season in the league, where we were dragging out results. A couple of games at Anfield where we looked very, very poor. We looked very, very leggy.
Everton, Villa, those games.
I think in Wolves, West Ham. These teams,
Southampton wasn't even a cakewalk.
Some of these teams came to Anfield and played us off the park in the second half when our legs had gone. And I do think there is a little bit of an issue with that, where we do need some more numbers. But ultimately, the ends justify the league. The ends justify the means. We won the league by 10 points, so we may sort of go for the same thing. I do think there's more quality in the team than last year, but potentially even less.
That's the fire alarm. We'll take a little pause and put the flames out. We're back. We've been fighting the raging inferno for the last half hours, but the flames are finally out and all is safe. I can't stress that enough. Or it might just have been a fire alarm test that went horribly wrong. One of the two anyway. So forgive us, listeners, if we are speaking like we can't remember a thing that we last said in the last couple of minutes, because we genuinely have been fanning around waiting for the last half hour. You've been fanning around waiting for the last half hour, haven't you?
I have been checking transfer updates all the way through.
Have you? I was just doing
nothing's happened.
There's nothing happened?
No.
Oh. I just wanted...
Madison from Spurs, he's done his ACL.
We don't want to talk about Madison. What we do need to talk about, though, is move back onto Isak, really. I think we've never been off Isak, but Newcastle. When I say Isak, I mean how shit Newcastle are in the transfer market, because I never thought my life would come to this, Jacko, that just caring who bloody Newcastle bought would obsess my every fucking waking hour, quite frankly. They managed to make a saga out of Benjamin Sesko, and it seems like they knew full well that he always wanted to sign for Man United. Bizarre behaviour. I don't want to be too critical of them, but I'm going to be. Mm-hmm. And now they're moving on to, well, apparently Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea. Enzo Maresco said, I think yesterday, during the window, anything can happen. That's also the case for Nico Jackson. We signed 2 strikers, let's see. What he means is they definitely want to sell him. Mm-hmm. Now, Newcastle are really in the sort of last chance saloon here, aren't they? They've got to buy somebody.
I mean, well, we were just speaking upstairs in the fire alarm break, and we
as it raged around you.
And obviously, I'm going to. I don't know. Obviously, probably the wages is a big factor in I'm going to Al Hilal. But we were saying, like, he probably would have been a perfect fit at Newcastle somewhere.
Darwin,
yeah. But they seem to be making a right pig's ear of any transfer that they're going in for. And that then obviously has a direct impact on us, hopefully, trying to get Isak. But I was reading yesterday, Rob, I think it was, and something like, obviously he's training on his own. But Newcastle had yesterday or the day before had this kind of family day.
Yesterday lunchtime.
Was it yesterday where they trained and then they brought all the families in and blah, blah, blah. But Isak wasn't part of it. Now I'm thinking, this could
be a barbecue.
Is that what it was?
I love to think that it might have been hastily arranged just to spite him.
Just to spite him, yeah. And you think, where is the? Obviously, we're being told like
Eddie went to get the sausages. Tyndall went to get the chops.
They locked Alexandria in the office, looking out the window.
But you just think, where does this for him? If we're basically saying that there's no chance of Newcastle selling these to us without them getting a replacement. At what point does Isak end up turning and say, and are they prepared to let him rot in reserves? You know, that old. I just find it really, really strange, and I appreciate, you know, trying to flip the boot on the other shoe. If you want to be strong and you want to show someone that, you know, the players are in charge, that I understand why they're doing it. But I just think it might be very hard for Newcastle to either build any bridges with him himself, but, you know, doing things like that, having these barbecues without people. So it just feels very frustrating
surreal,
because, as you say, it's bizarre, and they're making a right meal of all the transfers they're going in for, and, you know, and it just seems that we're waiting on their next move, and it's frustrating.
It's also like, what's he going to come up with next? I've planned a day at the cinema for us, and I bought all the tickets and the popcorn, and there's a budget for the pick and mix for the first team squad, but you can't come, Alexander. How more left out mean can they be to him? I mean, it is getting silly. There's just Jacko's point there. I've been making this back and forth with to Neil, also arguing about it, but he's of the mind that they have to get the replacement, that what they're briefing about the replacement is fact, and they will not release the player until they got this replacement, whoever he bloody well is. I'm not so sure. I'm more in Jacko's camp and think it's all gone too far. Of course, it's not unprecedented to rehabilitate one-to-way players. But there comes a point where Isak and his agent, I think, are within their rights to turn around and say, come off it. You're taking the piss here. It's my client's future can't be dependent on your competency in the transfer market. The fact that you haven't got yourself a director of football, you've got to just treat us in isolation. If you get the fair price, the fair high price, you've got to let him go, and the rest is up to you.
Well, I think at the moment Newcastle's entire approach to the whole thing is, I know I can say this openly and it can get clipped by Newcastle fans because they all hate us now anyway,
yes,
because we are the villains in this whole piece, not the embarrassing way that they're going around everything at the moment. The whole business approach is absolutely embarrassing. They have no plan. There's obviously a clear power vacuum, and as an ownership they have the money to just say, okay, you're sitting in the reserves for the next 2 years, we don't care, we don't need the money, we're not bothered. As a team, it has to play under PSR rules, which we all have to do, which we are doing. The way, even our approach at the moment, where we're going in all guns blazing with as much money as we've ever seen, we're still playing within the rules of the game, which aren't the rules of the Premier League. They're the rules of the Premier League as voted on by the 20 teams in the Premier League, including Newcastle and Man City. We know this is the self-governing of the Premier League. It's not like we're making the rules or breaking the rules. We're playing within these rules. We're abiding by everything. We're approaching. We didn't put in a bid until we knew we could put in a bid, but we're being painted as the villains all the way. So, as an ownership, they can let them rot. As a team, they need somebody in, and they can make the argument, well, if we sell him and we've got all this money and people know we've got the money, they'll charge more. People are charging more anyway because they know you're getting the money. It's not a case of you wait and see what money you get. They're charging you, whether you get 120 million off us or 150 million off us. But also, Chelsea are going, it's 80 million for this lad, you know. The lad we don't want is 80 million.
There's also a swing and round about it. If they get their replacement, say they get Nicholas Jackson in tomorrow, and
who's a decent forward,
right? Yeah, he is a decent forward. And say they get these two in, they then turn around to Liverpool and go, "So, what's your next bid?" And Liverpool rub their hands. We'll go,
105.
105. You've now replaced the boy we want. So they can weaken their hand with one move, or weaken it with another move. Either way, everyone knows what's going on. And and I'm not just saying this, Andy, because I'm biased. He tries to say with a straight face, but I think I mean this. I think Newcastle are, and their fans perceive, and I think the club knows, they remain restricted by PSR, and it restricts them. The actual effect of it affects them possibly more than any other club because they actually have the cash to burn. They have the cash ready to go. I've used the example before. Bournemouth could afford a £500 million spending spree in theory. They just don't have 500 million, not afford. They could be allowed it with PSR. It doesn't matter. They haven't got the dough. Newcastle have the dough. Selling Isak liberates them to effectively beat, certainly in the short and medium term, the PSR strictures. Now, if I were Newcastle, I'd say I'd like the era where that began, where we were free of PSR, to begin tomorrow. You know, if they get, even if they don't get a striker over the line and they've sold Isak, at least they can then start planning for the future. They can look at the wages of people like Guimaraes and Tonali. They can start approaching players who want 250 grand a week, and knowing that they can do these deals.
Yeah, I think they've accepted at this point that Isak is going to go at some stage, and people talk about the contracts, and the interesting thing about the contract is, obviously these days, and I know there's been a rule that's come in that's affected this slightly, but these days players are in big contracts so they can spread the transfer fee across however many years. So I don't think it's a case of when players are signing contracts and there's negotiations with the club, I don't think it's a case of, this is a 6-year contract and we can keep you here until this point. I think they'll say, listen, we're putting you in a 6-year contract because we want to sort of cook the books a little bit here. But if after however many years, 2-3 years, we're not matching your ambitions, you can go for this price or to this project. So I think that's an interesting one in the contract. And it sounds like he was promised. It's
a very good point, that.
Yeah, it sounds like he was promised that he could go this summer. And therefore I think it's very difficult. And you see the messaging coming out. I was quite worried actually when it came out that Sesko was going to Man United. I thought that maybe then there was going to be a whole thing of, right, no, we've not got who we wanted, so Alexander, you're staying for another season here. But the messaging coming out from them is very much, we're moving on to our different targets now, and it does seem like there are some targets out there that are, decent players, and obviously you can't really replace Alexander Isak. I think you said, one of the top 3 or 4 strikers in the world, but there are good players in there. There's Ollie Watkins, who Villa have had their own PSR issues. There's talk that they could accept 50-60 million for him. 29, peak of his career. Didn't have a good season last year, but before that was one of the top Premier League strikers. Jackson, I think, is a fantastic player. I really do rate him, and I understand that some issues around the finishing, maybe a little bit naive and immature at times. He's a young player, but his link-up play is really good. He's so intelligent. And I just sort of think if you're Newcastle at this point, I understand, like we got with Suarez, you can get another year out of them. All's rosy, you sell them on the next summer. But what happens to his value at that point? And I just sort of think, get the money in and build around it. The issue obviously is they've no sporting director, they've no, the CEO's gone, I can't remember, Dan Ashworth.
Darren Ealing.
There's no recruitment structure there, so
they still can do business.
Maybe they're not confident, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think at this point Isak's made his mind up, and even keeping him for another year, I just can't see that being in any way beneficial to them at this point.
No, I can't. I'm thinking about the prospects of a Jackson transfer to Newcastle, Paul. Well, the fee being touted is 80 million. It feels like a number plucked out of the air. Chelsea are sort of briefing that they're using the Ekatike and Sesko things as markers. And I think, well, if you do use those things as markers, they were very sought after strikers, and Nicholas Jackson isn't. I mean, apart from a now desperate Newcastle, who the hell was bashing down their door for Nicholas Jackson? Similar to Nkunku. People aren't bashing down similar to Darwin Núñez,
Yeah.
I would put Nicholas Jackson very much in the Darwin Núñez bracket in terms of his value. Good player, lots of potential, hasn't fulfilled it yet, can't really tell whether he's going to be a top striker or just a middle ranker, or even a total flop, quite frankly. It's hard to know with that striker. I think something around the Darwin Núñez fee in the early 50s, maybe 60, 65 at a push would be the most they could realistically expect to get for Jackson.
Yeah, but your point again, though, Ian, it's that, whether people are now sort of saying, well, we don't care whether you've got this money for Isak or not. The clubs could be putting an extra 10, 15 million on, Rob, because of thinking, well, if you go and get Jackson, we know Liverpool are going to give you X amount for that. So I think Newcastle have put themselves in a really difficult situation, and they've struggled getting players in, whether that's because of obviously no CEO, no director of football, etc. They tried to go for that Trafford, didn't they, the keeper, but he went back to City.
They've spent 2 years trying to get Trafford.
I believe so.
So it's not like it was an unexpected move.
Yeah, exactly.
At least I think the problem is they're finding nobody wants to play for them.
So they've got Alanga, didn't they? They
got Alanga, and they overpaid for Alanga.
Yeah.
And tapped him up.
I think the reason they're not getting people, I mean, at the end of the day, you can sell Newcastle. It's a passionate club.
Yeah.
You go there, you can be an absolute hero. There are lots of good things about Newcastle. Let's be serious about it. But one of the things at the moment is they can't offer big dough. They're getting. I think what's not being said enough is I think they're getting outmanoeuvred in terms of the wages being offered.
So personal terms, isn't it?
Why does João Pedro pick Chelsea ahead of Newcastle? They're about the same level in the league. They're both in the Champions League. Okay, I can see there's a London factor. There's a London factor. But if you're backed by the PIF, if you had the headroom with PSR, Newcastle should be in a position to outbid them on wages.
Yeah, and I think as well, Rob, again, we've credit where credit's due. They're a very, very passionate fan base, and you know that if you go up there and do well, you're going to be absolutely idolised, and I think that also, great respect to Chelsea. Sometimes you don't find their fans are as passionate about it as maybe Newcastle are. So you've got that as well, but they just seem to be really, really stalling, and something's going on behind the scenes that they're struggling to get players in, and unfortunately, it's having a knock-on effect to us at the moment. So.
Well, I think there's also the issue that Newcastle and Newcastle fans consider themselves to be a Champions League club now. And they're not a Champions League club yet. They're a club that's in the Champions League for the second time in 3 years. Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're a Champions League club yet, because Spurs will improve, United will improve because they can't get much worse than they did. And that doesn't mean the Newcastle are guaranteed top 5. And they only ended up in 5th position because of a referee, given the Villa game, who wasn't up to the standard that Villa would have wanted the game. Villa were talking about suing because of that. So, that's the fine margins, because if the Villa game had gone the way Villa expected it to, and if that decision hadn't been made, then Newcastle would be a UEFA Cup team at the moment, and that brings you a different level of player. And players aren't daft, their agents aren't daft, and they can look at it and go, that's not guaranteed Champions League. Chelsea's pretty much guaranteed Champions League again. Man United isn't, but they'll give you loads of money. Well,
and I think the United factor, isn't it? I mean, Sesko, if you look on paper, we're a big fan base, as in the biggest in the world, they always say, don't they? They're going to pay the wages. And even though they're not in the Champions League this season, that draw is clearly for Sesko and other players is always going to take people there rather than Newcastle. And Newcastle's got to realise that, haven't they, as well? That's the thing. But whether they do or not is another question.
Well, I saw somebody replying to a Newcastle fan on Blue Sky the other day, and I think... I can remember what club he supports, but I won't mention it. And he was saying that basically the whole system's fixed now. This idea of the Slice Six and the red cartel, which somehow includes Man City, and I never understand that. It's all fixed to benefit us. So you can't just invest anymore. You have to grow over a period of time. Like we did for a decade from when we nearly went bust. We've done it. We've grown to the level where we are now. You grow to the level. Grow. Do the Bournemouth, do the Brighton. Build and grow. That's the way you do it, and that gives you established success, and it gives you established grounds to build from. Newcastle aren't doing that. They want the quick fix.
Yeah, I mean, the ethic, it's childish beyond belief, their arguments. I mean, I was reading stuff, Newcastle supporters calling for a legal challenge to PSR. Again, as one of you said earlier, they literally voted for it. They were one of the clubs that voted for it. And if there was a re-vote on it and they didn't have Saudi ownership, they would be voting for it. Yeah. It's bizarre behaviour. Let's move on to the defence, shall we? Finish up with that. The Mark Guehi saga, we call it that, still drags on. Apparently Palace still looking for north of £55 million, which is a bit cheeky considering he's only got a year left. Guehi's side semi-briefing that he's relaxed. He'll see out his contract if he has to, which are probably to scare Palace a bit. You get the feeling Liverpool think this isn't what he should be gettable at 40 million, and maybe it goes late in the window. There's no immediate hurry for it. But Liverpool are being linked to another centre-back, and it has been bubbling under for a few weeks this now. Giovanni Leoni, who plays for Parma. Now, Joycey said Liverpool's interest is very significant and serious. There's been some other briefings that says Liverpool fear he may go to Inter Milan, where his previous coach has now moved there as manager, I think. What we know about him is he's 18 and he's 6'5", and I've YouTubed the ass off him, and he looks really good. In fact, I wish I hadn't YouTubed the ass off him, because now I want us to buy him badly. He's being sort of touted as Virgil van Dijk's successor, and you can see why. Have you YouTubed the ass off anyone lately?
I may not have YouTubed him as much as you have, but I did do some YouTubing yesterday with a few of the centre-back links that are knocking around, and of the 3 or 4 that I looked at, the other lads I looked at were big lads who could get rid, basically. They could stick their head in the way of things and they could knock the ball out. This lad looks like a footballer. He looks like a lad who can... He's strong, he's fast, he's got a pass on him.
He looked calm.
Clear. He looks very calm.
It's the calmness that got me. That when they said, "Oh, everyone's going to be the new Virgil van Dijk replacement," but when I watched his clips, I thought, "You're calm. You're playing at a different speed. It looks like Virgil looks like when he's defending.
Yeah.
He's just like, no, I'll just have this ball now, and you can all just wait until I'm good and ready, like a fucking centre half James Bond." There's that aura to him. I felt even just an 18-year-old. This is based on 3 minutes worth of YouTube clips. I'll stress, but
that is, there's not a great deal you can do with centre backs to make them look good on YouTube, because they don't do a great deal of interesting stuff. Most of them is a little bit of a jump, head the ball clear, or lash it out to touch somewhere,
or it hits him in the face.
Yeah, just get in the way, just block it, stick your foot there. That's your best bit, is sticking your foot in. But he is clearly got talent. He's actual talented footballer. Straight away I looked and went, that's the lad. I remember years ago, one of the earliest classes we ever did, we had a list of forwards to look at, and on the list were Bobby Firmino and Son. And it was only the links were just coming through at that point. So I was like, that's Son. He's a player in. Even more so than Firmino. I was impressed by him. This is the same thing with one where it just hits you straight away and you go, that lad can do it.
The problem we're up against, Andy, is he's 18, Italian, and the lure of a club who, like Milan, who I think would give him first-team football straight away, is something why I think Liverpool think it's a difficult one to do. How much football can we realistically give? I mean, you feel if we're serious about Guehi, that if we brought Leoni in, he would come in effectively as a fourth choice. It seems a difficult sell.
Yeah, and I suppose if when Gomez comes back, he would be fifth choice as well. And you've obviously, depending on his level when he comes in and how they see him, whether it's a project, whether it's a one for the future. You've other options there as well, like Endo and Gravenberch, who might just, like, if push comes to shove and a tight Premier League game, a couple of centre halves injured, does he go for the maybe slightly surer bet? I don't know, because I don't necessarily know the level Leoni's at. What I would say about it, though, is it's really important for us as a succession plan at centre half. We lost our up and coming star in Jarrell Quansah.
Buy him and loan him. That's the move.
Yeah, quite possibly. But we lost Quansah, and I think there was messaging coming out of Liverpool in March, April that Quansah wasn't for sale, and I do actually believe that was their stance. I think Leverkusen put in a bid that they felt they couldn't refuse, and obviously because he's an academy player, it goes down as 40 million profit in your PSR, and obviously they've got the buyback option in there as well, which mitigates the risk of that. Buying Leoni for a similar sort of price, there's talk of 30-35 million for this player, isn't there? It seems like that swap for Quansah, maybe Quansah was slightly more of a sure thing, unless this guy is literally the next Van Dijk, and they've identified that, and they're going to get him in, and he's going to be that. But
he is. I can assure you. Yeah. I would pay 100 million for him. I think
the Mark Guehi one, I think we'll be able to get him for 35-40 million because of the year left in his contract. He's not a 40 million player. He's probably a 60 million pound player. He's one of the better centre halves in the league. He starts for England, and you can get him a little bit cheaper, and that more seems like the type of move I can see Liverpool doing. But there does need to be some succession plan at centre half. Who is our next one coming through? Van Dijk's in his 30s. Konate's not a young player anymore. He's not old by any means. But Gomez he's 29 now, isn't he, as well? And Guehi's sort of in his late 20s as well. So you've got a lot of security, a lot of sure things there. But who's the next one coming through? I think they will look at something like that. Whether it's Leoni for 35 million, I'm not sure.
It's a tricky one. In a way, there's some echoes of the issues I think we may have around how we use Rio and Gamoa this season, Jacko. It's when a talent's that precocious, and it does look like Leoni is one of those. He's the next big thing, like in the sense that Lenny Yoro was a year ago. I think the market may be beginning to see him as truly special, but truly special young players aren't stupid. They get to realise they're truly special, and then go, I'm not like other young players. You don't get to put me in the stiffs for 2-3 years and give me a couple of more games each passing year. I need to play now to develop.
Yeah, and I think depending on if we do get anyone else in, Guehi, again, and then if Gomez is fit, your shout was a good one, Rob. If you can buy him and then put him on loan straight away and say, go and play at Inter Milan or whatever, on loan. But I am ready to get home and go on YouTube, by the way, because I've not really seen this lad. So, but from the reports, you're all over him, and I like that. Although I am the centre half unions up in, or what Ian said about he's trying to get centre half clips, and you can't get it on 3 minutes. I'm going to, me cards in the back.
You want to see the clips of Jacko? Jacko's YouTubes are sensational. In fact, I would actually subscribe to the YouTube clips of you playing football, Jacko.
We were only talking about the photo outside with Al Hansen and Virgil van Dijk on, obviously 2 Rolls Royces centre halves. But if this lad is, if you mentioned him in you got that sort of Van Dijk impression around him, then that it's a great impression to have.
He's fucking enormous, by the way.
6'5", loving that. Yeah. But also, if he can play a bit, which is fantastic, looks quick, he ticks all the boxes. It's just, are we going to be able to offer him what he wants? As in, is he the confident enough lad to say, well, I want to play now, and then how do we sell that to him? But definitely want to watch, and if again, I'll be going home and having a good look on YouTube.
I think there's a way of selling it to him where you point at Lenny Yoro and go, look what Man United have done to that lad there.
Yeah,
they've played him, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, they've killed him.
I think you can say to a player who's that young, you can say, look, you're not going to play 38 games, but you probably need to say you'll play 20 in the Premier League. You probably need to give them that sense, or even maybe it's as low as 16, 17, but you're going to also play 4 or 5 in the Champions League, and you play all the cups. So, you might have made 30 or 28 starts across all comps. I think you can sell that. To that, I think for Liverpool, if they were to sell it, it bleeds into the Konate question. You could. I mean, whether the kid can play both sides, I don't know. I'm just hypothetically, you could say, look, you can play next to Virgil and occasionally deputise for him. We obviously, if you think Ibu Konate, we rate, but he's still not committed to us. It's probably his last season. You don't say that to Konate. Where Mark Guehi fits into, I don't know. Look, you tell different stories to different players, and you never know how it pans out. You might find one of them very discontented by January time, but I think sometimes you have to gamble on it. I think you have to try and sign him, Andy, with the semi-intention of giving him serious first team minutes.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily sure where that would come over the next year.
It depends how good he is.
It does depend how good he is. You've got a situation with Konate there who's not signed a contract. Does it come to a point where it gets to January and Konate's not making a move, and they decide, like sort of we did, I guess, with Trent in the last few games of the season, that we're going to plan for the future. And is that somewhere where he maybe gets his game? I just think you've obviously got Joe Gomez there, who, when fit, is a fantastic option for us. Whether we bring a Mark Guehi in or not, I'm not sure. I'm not against the signing in any way, shape or form. I do think it's unlikely that Liverpool splash 35 million on somebody who's only got sort of less than 20 first team appearances. It doesn't feel like that's something we do. Although if he is the next big thing, and everyone knows he's the next big thing, then Liverpool
Lenny Yoro only had that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
And also Hussein.
Yeah, Dean Housen,
yes,
Hussein
yeah.
Housen.
And ultimately, Lenny Yoro goes to Man United because Man United were the only ones that were prepared to offer him 200 grand a week. Liverpool aren't going to do that. So whether Leoni's going to get these offers, whether there's the same interest from other teams, again, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not against the signing at all. I don't think it can be the only one.
No,
I do think there needs to be one more. And if it's the case of Mark Guehi and sort of a future project like a Leoni, I think that would make sense. But I do sort of feel like, going back to the Isak thing, if we're going to spend that money on Isak, I can see us potentially leaving ourselves a little bit short elsewhere and relying on, for example, a Gravenberch or an Endo to be our 4th or 5th choice there. I think we're going to leave ourselves shorter in a couple of positions, and maybe some people would like this summer.
I don't think we're going to risk that. I think we've done it once before, and I don't think they'd risk it again. I think Guehi, I think we must be fairly sure of it happening by now, because it's gone so quiet. Nobody else is linked with him. Even the Newcastle links have gone away. And in terms of Guehi, I think he would come in, he'd be our number 2 choice, because I think he's Konate's replacement. He's actually a year younger than Konate, which I didn't realise.
Is he?
I thought he was older. He was 25, Guehi.
Yeah.
He just seems to have been around for quite a long time. Obviously, probably not the place to talk about it, but I've had the same reservations about Guehi as Adam Smith and Neil have had, in terms of obviously the armband situation, which sits badly. But maybe that's educating the lad, because he's still a young lad. As a footballer, I think he would be the perfect, he's a plug and play, just drop him into the team. I think it would deal with the fact that Konate is clearly going to go.
Yeah, I think the longer this Canate saga drags on, it's hard not to suspect he's going to go. I almost don't give a shit at this stage because one thing's for sure, I don't think we're losing him this summer.
No.
We're not losing him this summer, so we've got him for at least another year, and it gives us a year to plan. Although, having said that, unless we get a couple of centre-halves in this summer who look the part, we could have a hell of a lot of work to do in the centre-half position next summer. It depends what kind of a season Virgil's able to have. I mean, when a player's, how old is he, 34 now?
Age, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
34. You know, a career is hanging by a bit of a thread, I'm afraid, at that age. The same applies to Mo Salah, whether we like it or not. It could be a stellar couple of years, or it could be a fall off the cliff with a win 6-9 months, and we don't know that. And how much work we're going to have to do. Okay, should we wrap it here? I think. How long have we done, Jimmy? Behind the curtain here.
50 minutes.
50's good. They've had enough. They had some fire alarm chat.
An hour 40 in real time.
An hour, it's been a long one for us. And quite frankly, what time is it? I'm starving.
Really hungry.
Let's go and do lunch. See you next time, guys.